After reeling off 4 straight losses to the Houston Rockets, the Houston Rockets held a players-only meeting, and the outcome was that Kevin Mchale was fired. Assistant J.B. Bickerstaff will assume interim head coaching duties. And in his first night on the job, the Rockets snapped their losing streak, beating the Blazers in overtime. Now, prior to the game, Mavs coach Rick Carlisle spoke out on the Mchale firing.
I'm really shocked. It's just hard to believe that something like that could happen at this stage. And the guy took the team unexpectedly to the conference finals last year, and to have this happen after 11 games is just preposterous is the only word I can come up with.
Stephen A., now that we have more information on the firing, do you think Kevin Mchale being let go is a good thing?
No, I don't. I think it's a shame. I think it's a travesty that he was let out of his job. I completely agree with Rick Carlisle, who's a conscientious individual when it comes to the coaching fraternity, particularly as the president of the Coaches Association. The work that he's done, how supportive he has been. There's a lot of guys that Rick Carlisle would not hesitate to speak up for, and accurately so, I might add. Brett Brown is another guy in Philadelphia. As perpetually as they have been losing, he's been put in a very untenable situation, and you need coaches to remind the public of some things that coaches go through which are no fault of their own. In the case of Kevin Mchale, let's be fair here. In some respects, there has always been leadership issues emanating out of Houston over the last 2 years. It was an argument that was made against them when they lost in the first round of Portland a couple of years ago. It was an argument about them up until they came back from a 3-1 deficit last year against the Clippers in the Western Conference semifinals. But this man should not have been fired. It's 11 games into the season, fresh off a trip to the Western Conference Finals. You don't fire a guy. A matter of fact, you're 10.5 months removed from giving him a 3-year extension. You talked about how he knows what it takes to win a championship, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, it's not about Kevin Mchale. It's about the players. Now, before I get into Dwight Howard, which I am about to, since I heard from the Houston Rockets last night, let me say this. James Harden's defense has been deplorable.
I agree.
James Harden is a superstar talent. James Harden can drop 45 like he did last night on anybody. But his defensive effort last season was exceptionally better than it had been in previous seasons past. Right now, the way James Harden is playing basketball, I could drop 30 on him. I mean, that's how horrible he's playing defense right now. And
I'll give you 20.
I'd say 30. I'm talking about the way he plays defense right now. And it's because he's not trying. It's not because he can't play. James Harden can do what he wants on the basketball court. And he can be a pretty good defensive player when he wants to be and when he's motivated. But the effort is glaring on the defensive side of the ball. So in that regard, their 4-game losing streak before last night isn't totally on Dwight Howard's shoulders. I think people once again misconstrued what I said when you asked me who do I blame most. I didn't say he was the only one, but to answer the question was who do you blame most? It's Dwight Howard, and I still blame Dwight Howard. Here's why. Dwight Howard, 17 points, 11.6 rebounds. You know, since he's been in Houston in the playoffs, the average is at 18.9 and 13.9 rebounds. We know that the numbers are something that Dwight Howard will always get because he's too good not to and he's too formidable not to. What I'm addressing is leadership. What I'm addressing is impact. And whether it's because he's not getting the ball enough, whether it's because the environment is a bit too lax, whatever the reason is, Dwight Howard isn't the Dwight Howard that he was those years in Orlando, Skip. Yep. He wasn't even though to a lesser degree in L.A., he was still impactful. When Dwight Howard did something, it made a difference. That doesn't seem to be the case in Houston. That's all I was saying about that. The reasons could be a multitude of things. But in the end, here is what it comes down to. I challenge anybody, and I'm not going to mention the person with the Houston Rockets, you know, really good person. They weren't sitting there, very respectful. They were just sending me numbers about Dwight Howard. That's all they did. They didn't do anything wrong. But they're coming to the defense of their own player. All I'm saying in response is this. I challenge any Houston Rockets fan in this nation I challenge anybody in the city of Houston. I challenge anybody in that organization to tell me that if Dwight Howard was as ferocious and as impactful as he was when he was in Orlando, is Mchale still the head coach of this team? I'd say he is. That's the point, because Mchale is a big man's coach. Mchale was supposed to be somebody assisting and helping him evolve more as a basketball player, not be the same guy or a tad bit less than what he was. His health has something to do with it, because Dwight Howard isn't 100% healthy. Don't get me wrong. But in the end, all I was trying to say is Dwight Howard hasn't been the Dwight Howard we expected him to be in L.A., and we expected him to be when he signed for $88 million in Houston. There is no getting around that. But I can't ignore the fact that James Harden ain't helping, because his defense really, I mean, it's the effort really looks sluggish. I haven't really watched every game. I've watched him about 4 or 5 times. The games that I've seen James Harden play, he hasn't shown up defensively. Just hasn't shown up.
Sometimes he doesn't show up offensively. I mean, just shooting so poorly.
Well, I'm just saying. But if you shoot, shoot poorly, you shoot poorly. That's different than not showing effort on defense.
And to your point about Dwight, just to be fair about this, he had 2 knee issues last year that sounded pretty serious.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about last year, because he was injured. This 41 games.
They talked about in camp, we got to limit his minutes to protect his knees. Now, he played 40 last night. That included overtime, but I don't know. They didn't protect his knees.
Had 19 rebounds.
And he had 19 rebounds. Didn't score much, but it didn't matter, because you want him to rebound and block shots.
That's right. That's right.
What did he block? 3 shots?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Not bad. Okay. I want to make the point right now that this team is not out of the woods because it won or stole that game at home last night. You realize they were down 15 going to the 4th quarter. And all credit to James Harden and to Corey Brewer, because they stepped up in the 4th quarter with 17 and 13 points respectively. But you know what happened at the end of regulation? It took an extremely, if we could see that, ill-advised pass cross court from James Harden on the fly. Look at this. I mean, that should have been intercepted, and Corey Brewer just catches it on the fly and just flings it from 3, and it goes in, and that forces overtime at the buzzer, okay? So that's a little lucky. That was a minor miracle,
very lucky.
So, but they did pull it off, so now there's a feel-goodness coming back to this team. I did like what Kelvin Sampson told the Houston Chronicle, obviously an ex-Rockets assistant, now coaching the University of Houston, and he predicted, knowing this team as well as he does, they will go on a run now to either show that Kevin wasn't the reason that they weren't playing, or to show that he was. You know, one way or the other, they're going to react to this in a positive manner. So I'm going to put the responsibility on the man who took it at the press conference yesterday. We haven't talked about him, but Les Alexander owns this team, and he said at the press conference, I've never seen my team play as poorly and with less effort. Now, again, this is through 11 games. You know, it's okay, but he's saying never. You know, he's never seen his team. He interjects, but I'm not attributing that to the coach. I just had to do something. So this is a classic case of you can't fire the players, so fire the coach. You have panicked. This is pure early season panic. And to Rick Carlisle's point, it was preposterous. To your point, it was a travesty. I don't get it. I've never trusted this team's basketball character. That's just me. Deep down, whatever this team is made of, as it revolves around its superstars, I don't love it. And I think Kevin Mchale actually did a lot to help that, to give them some credibility on the bench of a Hall of Fame player who's been a pretty good coach. And by the way, I do expect Kevin to wind up back with the T-Wolves, where he's from Minneapolis, played at University, or not from there, but he's from the state.
Yes.
Hibbing, actually, but he played at the University of Minnesota. And, you know, he was coach for a couple times. So I expect him to go back, and I expect him to be successful wherever he goes, because he's a really good coach.
I don't expect him to go back and coach in Minnesota. Let Sam Mitchell, the former coach of the year in the NBA, get a chance.
He'll be involved.
Be involved in some other capacity. Not the GM, though, because we didn't do that great of a job as a GM. He was actually a better coach than a GM, but that's beside the point. I will say to you, I totally agree with you about maybe that's what it is. when we're talking about this team. Maybe it's the character of the team.
Yep.
Because, again, when you're 3 years in with these guys and you're still looking for leadership inside that locker room, you would think James Harden is, but they're saying no, that he's feeling himself or whatever. I'm not going to accuse him of that because I don't know that.
Yep.
But I will tell you that's what folks were saying yesterday.
There was a story about how he's been aloof with his teammates.
Yes. So
right.
you got that going on. With Dwight Howard, I'm thinking about only 5 shots last night in 40 minutes.
Yep.
How does Dwight Howard only get 5 shots? And so when you look at it from that perspective, maybe that's involved in it or what have you. He's not being, paid attention to enough. He's not getting enough touches. Whatever the case may be, when I say blame, I'm not saying it like, oh my goodness, he sabotaged Kevin McHale.
Yep. I'm
saying that whether it's due to health or something else, Dwight Howard doesn't seem like Dwight Howard. And that has a lot to do with what impacts Kevin McHale, because if Dwight Howard was what he was supposed to be when he arrived from Orlando, this team continues on successfully.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
It is.
And maybe, again, maybe we point to what Kobe and them alluded to when they talked about Dwight. Or, Dwight's attitude like, the sun will shine tomorrow. It's beautiful here in Texas. People love me. I love them. I'm paying no state income tax while I'm getting this money. Like I was paying the 12.3% state income tax in L.A. I'm good. I'm good. Life is fine. The sun will shine tomorrow. Well, guess what? When you playing with dudes that want to win, that doesn't help you.
Yeah.
You can't. Even though, literally speaking, you're going to get beyond it and move forward, you literally cannot have the attitude that, life will be fine, so what, I lost the game. It's got to really kill you.
I agree.
And it never looks like it kills Dwight Howard.
So there were some suggestions in the Houston media that Kevin McHale had lost the locker room. I don't know how you lose it in 11 games after you finished second in the West last year in record and in the playoffs, right? Well, how do you lose it in 11, and why wouldn't the owner give you a chance to win back the locker room?
There was a meeting, and it was supposed to be a players-only meeting where nothing was going to get revealed, and I saw 3 different stories. 3 different stories with multiple sources. So clearly there were individuals inside that meeting who wanted the information to get out that they were not vibing with Kevin McHale. So there's
but they were also not vibing with James Harden from those reports, right?
Whether you want to sit there and say James Harden, because I'm certainly not going to put this part on Dwight Howard, but the point is that the team itself, as players, got Kevin McHale fired.
I agree. Simple as that. In the end.
In the end, that's what they did. They got him fired because they had that meeting.
James Harden was 5th in player efficiency last season. He is 23rd now. Coming up next, is President Barack Obama a bad man? He seems to think so. We'll explain his comments when we come back. I can't wait for this topic.
I mean, this is unbelievable. You need to show him more respect.
And you can say that nonsensical stuff,
And then to top that off, you're moody. I'm not joking, bro.